Court, which happened this morning. Maybe just to take colleagues back a little bit so that you can have a little bit of a context as to how all this came about. You will recall that, we had approached the High Court. And what I mean by we, it's Mr. Chenranjai, who's on this call, Mr. Sidi Sane, Mr. Bakari Dabo, Mr. Pasamba Jau, and myself had again taken the matter of diaspora voting and for our rights to be reaffirmed, to basically uphold our rights to be able to vote as diasporans not living in the country. We got an actual judgment from the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land, reaffirming these rights. Again, further to this, time had lapsed since the judgment, which was several months ago. We again approached the High Court, seeking leave to apply for an order of mandamus for the purpose of compelling both the Gambia government and the Can we please Can we please mute? Can we please? Thank you. So yes, so we approached the High Court, obviously seeking leave to apply for an order of mandamus for the purpose of compelling both Gambia government as well as the IEC to comply with the full judgment of the Supreme Court on the 17th of March 2021 by registering, the diasporans to be able to vote for the purpose of participating in all public or general elections to be held in the Gambia, particularly for the forthcoming presidential elections. On December the 4th, 2021. So again, as applicants, we had obtained this judgment in our favor, as I stated before, from the Supreme Court. And in that, they had declared that pursuant to Section 9 of the Constitution, every Gambian, including those residing outside the jurisdiction, is entitled to be registered to vote in an election to the offices of President, members of National Assembly, for local government offices, and traditional rulers, as well as in a referendum. We also stated that since the judgment, we have not seen any steps taken by Gambia government or the IEC to put in place the mechanisms that would enable the applicants, which is us, to be registered as voters in compliance with the judgment of the Supreme Court and the Constitution. We also stated that, before the judgment of the court, the IEC announced publicly that the people living in the diaspora who are eligible to vote would be registered to enable them to participate in the public elections to be held in the country. We also stated that, the IEC, having prepared for the registration of the diaspora and having fixed the date for their registration, must have demarcated the boundaries for the diaspora or worked out the mechanisms for their registration and also determined how and where we should vote. We also stated in our prayers to the High Court that it's also the duty of government to introduce an amendment of the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia to change the number of constituencies listed as soon as the demarcation happens by the IEC. We also did state that neither the Gambia government nor the IEC have informed the public as to what they have done and why the Constitution was not amended to change the number of constituencies as needed. We also stated that clearly the chairman of the IEC, in a public statement issued recently, clearly stated that they've done everything to ensure that the diaspora can be registered and be able to vote. But as the law stands, unless it is changed, the people in the diaspora, which include ourselves as the applicants, would not vote in any forthcoming elections. We stated that in light of this, no free, nor fair, nor transparent elections can be held in the Gambia if the Supreme Court judgment under Section 39 of the Constitution are ignored or disobeyed. So again, we informed the High Court that we have reached out to the IEC with written letters to the IEC, but again, and also to the Gambia government. We only got one response from the Gambia government. We didn't get any response from the IEC. So again, what we had stated that we felt that both the Gambia government and the IEC deliberately disregarded the said judgment of the Supreme Court and Section 39 of the Constitution. Thereby, they continued to violate and infringe upon our rights, which is the fundamental right to vote and to register to vote in any elections in the country. So generally, that's the gist of it in the prayers to the court when we approached them. Now, a judgment came out this morning, as most of you are aware. Primarily, we weren't successful in that endeavor because the application was dismissed on the basis that the Supreme Court has exclusive original jurisdiction in relation to the interpretation and enforcement of Section 39 of the Constitution, and thus have all the powers exercisable by the courts below it. So such powers including the granting of the mandamus. According to the court, this is from our lawyers, the substantive summons from the Supreme Court, one of the prayers was an order directing or compelling the IEC to register Gambians, which I've already explained. The Supreme Court, however, again, in its wisdom, did decide to grant a declaratory relief, and the order that all Gambians are entitled to be registered, including those living outside of the Gambia, which is us, the diaspora. Now, the High Court judge stated today that the Supreme Court had the power to compel the IEC or make an order directing the IEC by way of mandamus, but instead granted a declaration of the rights already provided in the Constitution. Thus, the High Court, which is a lower court, could not therefore grant the same order as asked for by ourselves, the applicants, in the Supreme Court, but for which the Supreme Court did not grant. So, if the High Court did so, the judge said it would be indirectly varying or interfering with the judgment of the Supreme Court. In addition, for the High Court to even be able to grant this application, there ought to have been something on top of the declaratory order in the form of a consequential order. Since there was no consequential order by the Supreme Court, the declaratory order or judgment on its own is not capable of being enforced. So, as things stand now, we are looking at, going back to pursue this matter now through the courts, going back to the Supreme Court to basically ask them to at least again look at the enforcement mechanisms that are available. We are consulting and we continue to consult with our lawyers. But just to state that as far as we're concerned, this is not the end of the matter. You can't have the highest court in the land make a ruling and it's not enforced. So we are definitely going to pursue the enforceability of our rights, especially our rights to vote as Gambians living outside of the Gambia. So I'll stop there for now. If you have any questions or any areas of clarification, I'm happy to make those where I can. And I'll also ask Chairman Jai, who's also here with me and was one of the plaintiffs, to say a few words and also to join me in answering some of the questions. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, all right, okay. Well, thank you all for attending this press conference and Jagan for the clear and concise summary of the case. Basically, we're back to square one with respect to vindicating our rights to vote. The court vacated this and punted to the Supreme Court, and we're going to go back to the court after consulting with our lawyers. For me and other plaintiffs, this is a very, very trying and in some sense a disappointing occasion. The fact that we are here, for me, indicates the larger failure of the transition of the coalition government. These are matters that should have been handled in year one after Jammeh left the Gambia. The fact that we're waiting 5 years hence to deal with this matter indicates the larger failure of the transition. We should have been far ahead of this. This should have been settled in day one. But here we are, and we got to plug along and make the best of it. But I just wanted to state that it is a failure of the entire transition process. We should not have to as diasporans take this initiative on our own. This should have been part and parcel of the reform agenda that the coalition government coming into power after Jammeh left to pursue with vigor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thanks for that. So yeah, the floor is open for any questions. Please just yeah, unmute your mic and yeah, just fire away. Thank you. Yusuf, yes. Yusuf,
thank you very much for the press conference and I guess for exercising your rights as citizens in trying to ensure that you get the right to vote. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like things are moving in that direction. But besides this, what do you make of the president's statements with regards to diaspora? He had an interview on QTV. I'm sure you must have seen it or heard it. He said that the diaspora should come down and register. Unfortunately, it was very late at that time to ask anybody to travel to Gambia to register. And he quickly realized that, if you could see in that interview, and he said that next time, it was something that, what do you make of the president's statement with regards to diaspora voting?
Chadla, do you want to take that? I'm happy to take that too.
Well, I didn't see that statement. His statement was that the diaspora should come and register individually and in order to vote. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, on QTV, he was talking to Aliou Cisse on QTV, and he was talking about that the diaspora should come to register, but then he quickly realized that it was very late. You could just see, and he said, basically, pretty much next time, the diaspora would definitely vote, that they would get it all right. Mm-hmm.
Well, that is not a serious statement. The idea that fundamental rights can only be exercised if everybody in the diaspora ventures to come home to register is not a sensible and practical solution to what we face. It is a failure of the IEC and the government of Adam Barrow to make sure that they enforce our rights as citizens to vote. He is admitting a failure on his part, and the diaspora coming to vote individual is not a remedy. The remedy is to make sure that measures are in place to register the diaspora. There are ample opportunities for them to have done that over the last 5 years. So I don't see that as a serious statement on the matter.
And maybe just to add that, yes, I did see snippets of it, especially that portion. I mean, what President Barrow said was just re-echoing exactly what the IEC had said. And the IEC had said this, I think, maybe a week or so earlier before that interview. So he's just regurgitating what the IEC has said, which also tells me that, you know, this is it's a lack of political will. It's a lazy option, and it's not a solution to the issue. You know, if it was that easy and it wasn't a problem for obviously, if you're a Gambian and you're eligible and you're in the country, that you can't be disenfranchised. That wasn't even the issue that we're looking at. The issue we're looking at is, and we were hoping that he would lead, you know, given the gravitas of the office that he holds, the fact that he's the first citizen, he's the head of state. He presided over promises that were made alongside the reforms which haven't happened, and also promises that he actually made about diaspora voting. And he's reneged on that. Not only did he renege on it, but certainly the IEC has done the same thing as well. So we don't take that statement with you know, any sign of confidence or any sign of affirmation. In fact, it's a blatant admittance of failure. Failure to uphold the commitments and the promises that he made to us, the Gambian people, and also failure in the reform processes, which basically have not gone very far at all. Thank you.
And my follow-up question to that is the issue of the finance. There was some confusion as to whether was the finance for the diaspora included in the IEC budget until the finance minister reported at the National Assembly saying that they would need a supplementary. But guess what? Supplementary has come, nothing about that. What do you make out of that important issue? Because some say, oh, maybe there was not enough money to actually do it. That's one of the biggest usual excuses. I don't know if I'm sure you've been following this thing, and that's been one of the biggest excuses which a lot of people have been touting to. And obviously the technical experience to do it is another issue. But the finance part of it, the minister saying that there wasn't any funds for it, that they would need a supplementary. A supplementary has come, and there's no diaspora funding in there.
Jalen, this is Coach Samba. Can I just
please go ahead.
I cannot just let this opportunity go away. Here is the thing: the issue about diaspora voting funding is nothing but a gimmick, and it demonstrates the dishonesty of this administration. It is very ironic that the current finance minister, who was one of Jammeh's henchmen, is now pretty much deciding whether we should vote or should not vote. The reason, the reality of the matter is this: there is nothing in that budget that would suggest that diaspora voting was not allocated for. And what is happening with the diaspora voting is an indictment of not only Barrow and his dishonesty and deceitful ways, especially towards every promise that he has made to the Gambian people, but it is an indictment to the IEC and its independence. It is rather sad that you can see very similar statements being delivered by both the government and the IEC, which is supposed to be an independent institution. When the IEC came with the first schedule for the diaspora vote, for the registration of voters, the diasporas were there. Did they not then factor in this financing? And there is a repeatable fact that actually way before this budget was tabled, the Ministry of Justice had summoned the IEC and the Ministry of Finance to come together and work out the modalities of financing not only the elections, but the referendum and the participation of the diasporans. So this notion by the minister that they know nothing about this financing is nothing but deceptive, and actually, to call it bluntly, it's a lie and an attempt to cover their deceitful ways of once again deceiving the Gambian people. But again, I am not surprised, because Adama Barrow is more interested in perpetuating himself in power than respecting any decision, any promise that he had ever made or given to the Gambian people. And I think that is the reason why they're using all these lame excuses. They went with finance, we debunked that. Then they went with, we need to amend their constitution, we debunked that. Now they are playing these delay games and say, okay, come, because there's no more time. There's not enough time for people to vote. It's nothing. They have no legs to stand on, but this is a demonstration of a government that is dishonest and a leader who is interested in nothing but staying in power for as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
This is Cherno. Let me add to that. I understand 80 million was included in this supplementary appropriations that was just passed a few days ago. The issue is one of lack of political will. It's not lack of funding. And the mechanism and the funds are available to make diaspora voting a reality. Barrow has decided that this is not a priority and probably is not in his political interest to pursue. It's that simple.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Any other hands? No?
Hello.
Yes? Who's that?
Assalamu alaikum. This is Nene.
Yes, Nene.
Yeah, I was just wondering, since the diet is gutted, and this was taken to the highest court of the Gambia, is it the end of the road then? Does that mean that nothing else can be done? It's sort of a lost case. Is that the conclusion?
No, that's not the conclusion at all. In fact, that's why in my opening statement, I gave a background as to how this came about and what our next move is. And the next move is we're going back to the Supreme Court. The door hasn't been closed. I think it's still wide open. The only issue that we have obviously is the timeliness of this. But as I said, we are going to apply for an urgent hearing. And I think we should, all the rules of the courts give us that right to make that appeal or to appeal to the court so they can hear this case urgently. So it's not the end of the road. In fact, we're still on course and we're still going to pursue it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yusuf Taylor, Flex, your hand is up.
Yeah, well, if nobody had a question, I think I have quite a few questions about this. In simple layman's terms, for people who may not understand all the legal sort of jargon, like what actually was the Supreme? Because I actually found it a bit confusing. I found it slightly confusing. I've been reading it, trying to get my head around what they are actually trying to say, because I believe the laws are quite clear in Section 11 of the Electoral Act, and also 141 is also very clear. And the Supreme Court, I don't believe, have they spoken to point 141, which is giving the IEC the right to make laws for diaspora to vote in presidential elections, quite specifically.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah. So if you recall, I mean, in their statement, there were two things that were actually ruled on. The number one is just the reaffirming our rights under Section 39, right? Which is the right to vote and be registered. To state that at the end of the day, the diaspora cannot be left out because they satisfy the criteria which is requested for you to be able to be eligible to vote. So we must be registered. That's the first thing. The other thing that they did say, which is interesting, we still need to follow up on that, is the issue of the fact that one of the sections under the Electoral Act actually, bars, people in the diaspora, if you're not residing in the country, you can't sit in as an executive member of a political party. And that also said that the court said that that's smacked of discrimination. So these are the two kind of like big victories that we had. In terms of enforceability, and this is where we are now, we're not at the level where we are basically asking the courts to affirm the rights. They've already done that. Now we are at a level where we are asking the courts now to actually follow through on the judgment that they made, to basically, at least compel the Gambia government and the IEC, because they were the respondents, and the IEC is the, as you well know, it's the elections regulator in that country. They're the only ones that can do certain things to basically trigger this mechanism moving forward. But also they have to work hand in glove with the government to basically ensure that this is properly done and is properly deployed. So that's really the two things that we're basically asking the courts to do at this point. Any other specifics, was not pronounced upon. I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. So what in fact is that the Supreme Court is just making a pronouncement. They are not trying to follow through as one would assume. But then how does it work. So is it necessary that you must, if they make a ruling, that they should be asked to act on that ruling again? Isn't it common sense that they would try to ensure that the Supreme Court, as the Supreme Court is respected, their rulings or pronunciations should have effect? I mean, I'm a bit baffled and confused there, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the risk of speaking on behalf of the courts, because I don't think I have the technical competence or the capacity to do so. But again, I mean, I share your frustration as well, and also even to a certain degree, the nonsensical aspects of where we are at this point. But I think I'm safe to say that certainly it's to be expected that if a court gives a ruling, it must be followed through. So again, we are going back and basically asking them on the enforcement, and then we'll see where we are. I think also just to say that this is a landmark case. The country has never ever crossed this threshold before. So I think this is a novelty certainly for us as the plaintiffs. Or the applicants, and then certainly for the Gambia government, for the IEC, for the entire country, including the courts. This is a novelty. It's something that's new that we haven't done in our political history. As things stand, let's see basically where all of this ends up. But I think for us, certainly after consulting with our lawyers, we're very, very confident that we will see a positive outcome going forward, because this is more than only just votes. This is about, at this point in time, we are now testing the boundaries of the credibility of the justice system in the country. If you have the highest court in the land giving a judgment and it is ignored, then the question then remains to be asked, is it fit for purpose? Why do we have to now basically look into the courts or even rely on the credibility of rule of law in a country that is supposedly turning a new leaf and embracing the tenets of democracy, transparency, accountability, and also respect for institutions. Thanks. Any other questions? I mean, we can take one or two more because we are almost now at the 45-hour mark, even though we started about 10-15 minutes late.
I have another quick question.
Okay, so Nene, and I also see Saul Badge's hand. So Nene first and then Saul. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Johnson, this whole case, would you refer to this as a violation of the human rights of Gambians, diasporian Gambians?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that is why we went to the courts. I mean, our rights, the disenfranchisement, the continued policy of disenfranchisement, in the Jammeh government, and now seemingly being, again, being perpetuated or being, fully deployed by the Barrow government. It's clearly a policy, and as Cherno and Prasan Bajau also spoke to this. There's a lack of political will to basically do the right thing. Again, it's not as if this thing happened yesterday. They had 4 years, and then also maybe just to also state that we, in no small measure, as far as civil society is concerned, especially within the diaspora, MSDG and others, GAMCORD, Right to Know, Duga and others. We've stretched out our hands many times in the spirit of partnership to basically work with the IEC and basically assist where we can, technically certainly, to be able to at least get them, one, fully appreciate the magnitude of this exercise, but at the same time also to get them to realize that, one, they cannot do it alone, but we can all work in partnership to ensure that this is done. Strengthening democracy and popular participation in the country. So clearly, yes, this is a rights issue. There are no two ways about that. And as long as 100,000 Gambians continue to be disenfranchised, again, anybody that loves the respect for human rights should also jump on this bandwagon and ensure that it stops forthwith.
Okay, Mr. Johnston, just quickly,
hold a minute.
Okay.
Let me add to that. I think the other issue I wanted to emphasize is that the Gambian diaspora is a significant part not only in numerical terms as a percentage of the population, but in terms of its contribution to the nation's GDP. It is among one or two of the highest in terms of the proportion of remittances and its contribution to the national economy. So to disenfranchise this segment of the population, of its citizens, calls into question the legitimacy of any future elections absent our participation. I know that that is not something at the front and center of the political parties, certainly of Barrow himself, but in any well-ordered society, you would think a large segment of your population not participating would question any elections. So it's an important element as well.
So it's just a follow-up to say that since it's a human rights violation, can you see your team going as far as filing against the government in the Human Rights Commission in Geneva? Would you go so far?
Well, we haven't discussed this. I mean, at this point in time, we're looking at obviously exhausting all, local remedies. I think certainly, we still have faith in the courts. We still have faith in the courts. We still believe that, the courts will do the right thing, and they have done the right thing. I mean, look, let's not be too despondent at the results that we've gotten so far. There's a bump in the road. That is true. Today's ruling was disappointing, but the reality is that we've also been pointed back to another direction, and so we're going to pursue that. And again, as I said, we still need to consult with our lawyers if we're going to take a different path. But at this point in time, obviously, all the cards are on the table. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did I see Saul? Did you want to come in? No? Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, what I would do is maybe ask Chelna just to say a few words as we round this up. Chelna, over to you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to summarize by saying that the ruling is a disappointment, but it does give us a roadmap as to what to do next. The Supreme Court's decision is very, very clear and explicit. We have a right to vote. But having made that ruling, that had to be enforced. There have to be mechanisms to register and make that possible. The court will now be called upon to ensure that that is done. So from our standpoint, this is another bump in the road. It's not the end of the road. We will exhaust all our remaining remedies and put it back on the IEC and the government of the Gambia to make sure our rights are vindicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chelna. And thank you very much, colleagues, for joining this call. As I said, we apologize for the short notice, but that's just the nature of things. Again, as Chelna had said, this is just a bump in the road. It's not the end of the road. And just continue to basically support us, continue to support the elevation of basic rights for every Gambian, irrespective of where you reside. And I think this is really a fight for not only us in the diaspora or only the applicants in this particular case, but I think it's a collective fight. It is really a fight that we are taking on to improve our democratic culture, to improve governance, to improve popular participation as enshrined in the Constitution, as enshrined in the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, and also as enshrined in many of the human rights articles of which Gambia is a signatory to and also has an obligation to uphold. We strongly believe that certainly if you're going to have close to 23% of eligible voters being disenfranchised, one must then ask about the credibility of any political or elections exercise moving forward. We have for too long been disenfranchised, and we have decided that we basically going to take our rights back. We'll do it through the legal way, through the courts, because those are the avenues that are available to us, and it's our rights to approach those institutions. And we will do that. We'll also continue to be transparent in everything that we do. We will inform you anytime that we make progress, whether it's good news or bad news. I think people deserve to know how far this case is progressing or not progressing. So we will continue to be in touch. We'll continue to be open, and we'll continue to be open and to be transparent with you as far as this case is concerned. And again, just thank you very much for joining us. And also, we appreciate your support. We appreciate your participation. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.